My point of view when it comes to the adults out there who may feel like they're coerced into either pretending to believe in God or just, trying to avoid the subject very studiously is we ought to be speaking up more. And that's the topic that I'd like to talk about today, which is standing up for yourself as an atheist.
Yeah.
It's something that I think people don't do enough of, and it's something that we tried to do just by having this show. You know as well as anyone that when people a lot of times call in, they say, why do you even have a show? What are you doing, trying to convert people to atheism?
Yeah.
My point of view is, no, we're not trying to convert people to atheism. In fact, when people set out to specifically convert somebody to something, I think that's obnoxious.
Yeah.
I mean, I am irritated by a Christian who just walks up to me and said, hey, have you heard the good news about Jesus? Now, some people would argue that just to fight back, we ought to be going around spreading the word of atheism. Hey, have you heard the good news? There is no, there is no God.
It's all just made up.
I think that's taking it a little bit far.
You're no one.
I mean, if I think it's rude behavior coming from anybody else, then why would I do it?
Exactly.
On the other hand,
playing devil's advocate.
No, I'm not playing devil's advocate. This is really what I think now.
Okay.
When people hear about what atheism is, it's usually because it usually comes from people in the church or people writing, writing from the pulpit to the general public in mass-produced articles, saying, this country's going to hell because of all these atheists who have evil in their hearts and are going to destroy the world and abolish religion.
Yeah. Stamp it out in all public forms.
Yeah. And, what we say is, if we're not going to tell people what atheists are like, who are they going to hear it from?
Yeah.
Those guys.
Yeah.
Atheists, I think there's no arguing that actually being an atheist is a marginalized position in this culture. But the fact that it's marginalized is sort of self-fulfilling, because the more marginalized we get, the more atheists are kind of afraid to bring up the fact that they are atheists.
Yeah.
We're embarrassed. Everybody hears all the time, atheists are evil. They're only atheists because they want to do bad things and they don't want to feel like there's a God oppressing them. Yeah. And, saying you're an atheist would bring up a need to make a bunch of embarrassing explanations, and a lot of people just don't want to make the effort.
Yeah.
But by not making the effort, of course, we're letting them get away with that and making ourselves more marginalized.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that it's important to go ahead and stand up for ourselves. So when somebody comes up to you and says, hey, can I tell you about Jesus? You have a right to take that as an open invitation to discuss their beliefs and discuss your beliefs with them.
Yeah.
And I realize that's scary for a lot of people, which is why I didn't say you have an obligation, although I thought about that.
Of course.
People, for instance, you'll have coworkers who constantly forward all kinds of sappy emails.
Yeah.
And you would think that if they knew that you're an atheist, then they would stop doing that because it's annoying.
Well, that would be the polite thing to do.
That would be the polite thing to do.
But the realistic thing is they're going to send you even more.
Right, because they're like, hey, oh, that poor person, he's an atheist.
Yeah. He apparently hasn't heard of Jesus before.
Yes. Right. As if anybody hasn't heard of Jesus in our culture. Come on. But, all he needs is someone to reach out to him and tell him the truth. Now, I am totally for free speech. Go ahead, reach out to me. But do not be surprised when I answer you.
Yeah, when I reach back.
It reminds me of something we were talking about way back in 2001, after the terrorist attacks occurred on September 11th.
Okay.
an editorial came out, if you recall, where the basic content was, thank goodness all the atheists have shut up since September 11th. Thank goodness we're not hearing from them anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure that was actually true, but if it was, I have a theory, which is that, believe it or not, a lot of atheists were just too polite to
essentially rub it in.
To rub it in, yes. I mean, let's be practical here. We know a lot of people are theists, and we know that the nation was in a grieving period at that time. And when, you know, a lot of people have just died, maybe it's a time to go ahead and let people find comfort in their imaginary friend. Yeah. And not jump in their face and say, hey, that imaginary friend you're praying to isn't real. Exactly. You moron.
Exactly. Which is actually an important distinction, because a lot of religions typically go after people who are in that position.
Yes.
You have school children, you have people in the hospital.
People who are vulnerable.
People, exactly, who are vulnerable. You go and talk to them, because they're going to be the easy ones to convince. Because they want to believe
it's not just something religions do, it's something con artists do.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know, you'll see con artists go into this long spiel about how most people retire, or most people can't retire, and they die in poverty, and you know, they're living hand to mouth. They can't afford anything. But
therefore, give me $40,000, and I'll make sure you can retire.
Yeah. So, some atheists anyway are polite.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, I do remember a lot around that time. They had certain things going around, messages going around saying, you know, thank God and God protect us and blah, blah, blah. Right. And it's kind of a bad time to go stick your finger in the wound and twist it around a couple times and say, no, he's not really there. So,
and there's nothing wrong with being polite.
No.
But you can let that politeness, I mean, you can carry it too far to the point where people will take advantage of you for knowing that you're going to be polite, and so they feel free to wave their religion in your face and say, and just say whatever they want, and they're pretty sure that you won't respond. In fact, you know, it's perfectly likely that a lot of these people have never really heard a response before.
Yeah.
You know, lots of them have never heard what atheists are all about, except from religious people who have a reason to make you hate atheists.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is actually one of the hard parts about some people as to why they don't respond when, you know, have you heard the good word about Jesus or whatever. It's because chances are if someone's coming up to you with that approach, they have argued and debated.
Yeah.
Maybe not much, maybe not well, but they've at least got some boilerplate responses to all the different
And a lot of them, if you peel through the first layer, are dumb responses. But,
exactly.
But they sound good.
Exactly. But at least they have that. But if you just walk up on the street and you don't host a TV show on atheism, and you haven't, you know, looked at the arguments and talked with a lot of people, then you might not. You know, you may just have to fall back on, I just don't believe because I just don't see evidence.
And you know, if you never hear, if you never argue with people, then you won't get any practice.
Exactly.
And that's the only way to get good at it. I mean, I remember when I was in college, you know, these guys like Reverend Brother Jed or something like that, and this guy named Cliff would always be on campus. And I heard students arguing against him. I mean, most people seemed to dislike him, but I noticed that the students' arguments were actually pretty bad.
Yeah, yeah.
It takes practice, you know, just like anything else.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring this up, but not go through it yet. My wife received an email from an old boss of hers. My wife has not been working since late 2001 herself because we had a baby.
Okay.
And so she was. So anyway, she's been a stay-at-home mom for a while, but she was friends with this person at work who was her boss, and this woman found out that she was an atheist. But they never really discussed it.
Okay. Did they find out when she was working there?
What?
When they were still working together?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Which is another thing I want to point out is that people finding out you're an atheist won't necessarily get you fired. If that's what you're afraid of.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I'd like to give a shout out today to somebody who might be watching. He's actually, in some sense, my boss.
No.
And he found out a few months ago that I was on an atheist show. I mean, he happened to catch me flipping through channels one time. He's a Christian, but he's pretty good-natured about it, and we've actually kind of bantered and joked about it and sent some emails back and forth. And he said, and when he found out I was going to be on today, he said he'd want to call and bug me. So, so I let him know when this is on. So, Jeff, if you're out there, hi.
You're welcome to call in a little bit later. But yeah, actually speaking about that, the first time I came on the show a couple of times early on when we used to have the group solstice shows. Mm-hmm. During the solstice, we would have, like 20 people on, something like that, from the ACA, and I had been on one or two of those. I think the first time I tried out as co-host, this was like 2.5 years ago or something like that. Again, the first time I went on as, a solo, me and Martin, I think it was. I went on. I don't work on Mondays. I went into work on Tuesday. On the way to my desk, I hadn't even been there 10 minutes. My manager at the time, who is on the phone, just like mutes the phone and gives me a big thumbs up. I saw you on TV. Excellent job. Yeah. And then I get back to my desk. Again, still haven't even officially clocked in yet. And the guy in the cube next to me had seen me on the show and gave me a big thumbs up for it.
You know, quite honestly, I'm surprised that so many people actually bother watching public access.
I know. But it's a good thing. So.
I mean, really, what you'll find is that a lot of people who hear you talking about this may not think, oh, this is the most horrible thing I've ever heard. Their reaction may be, I've never heard this stuff before. Nobody's ever mentioned it.
Yeah. And I think it's important that this show typically, it's pretty well thought out. We have good arguments. We're open to discussion. And all of that type of thing. We're not just here saying God sucks and y'all are all stupid.
Yeah, and we're friendly, loving. We're here to make you feel better about you.
It's a fun show. And yeah, I mean that makes a big difference.
The floor manager is making gagging motions at me now. So
yeah,
anyway,
it's nice having that, because again, it's a good show. We're not attacking anything.
Yeah.
And so if they come out and say y'all are just a whole bunch of atheists and y'all just want to piss everybody off and why can't y'all believe in God? It doesn't fit.
And that's something I meant to say about the Nudo case a minute ago, is that if you listen to the general buzz about what people are saying, like on conservative talk shows and radio stations and TV shows, people who don't like Nudo are saying, well, why does he have to make all this trouble? Why can't he just shut up and let people have their religion? And, why is he imposing his values on us? And of course, the reality is the opposite, which is that inserting the phrase under God into a essentially state-sponsored litany was imposing religion on non-believers. Yeah. And the reason that Michael Nudo, who, by the way, I admire very much for standing up for atheism.
So publicly.
The reason Michael Nudo felt he had to do this was because he felt that it wasn't right to have an official statement that says, Americans believe in God. Because, we're Americans and we don't.
Yeah.